be those who've joined after that. There are some stalwarts who remain right from the time, you know.
Also,
Annie Cherian?
no, sir, 81.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, I went back, I think, for the 75th anniversary. I spoke there.
Oh,
And,
okay.
they have an auditorium, or they had a stage where I used to be punished. So,
Which year was that? Which year was that?
whichever was the 75th anniversary, so I'm guessing that would have been the early 2000s sometime.
Oh, I should have been there.
There were about 1,000 people there. It was a big deal.
Oh yeah, definitely. I should have been there because I was
I think
already
it's last year
chairman.
when Jarajrao left.
Yeah, so
Right.
Sheila Murthy, myself, and Gogula Ramana spoke.
Yes.
Okay, good. Which years were you in Hyderabad Public School?
I was there from 71 to 73.
Okay.
Mrs. Samuel was my teacher in the Standard 5.
Okay, I'm an old Little Flower, All Saints product.
Okay.
So good. For those
Then
of you
I came to the US in 86. So I've been here for 35 years, yeah. So.
Yeah. For those of you wondering who I'm speaking to, it's Krish Dhanam, our speaker for this afternoon.
Okay, sir. As you prepare laptop, yes, sir. On the way. Sorry, sir.
Sir, I know Krish Dhanam's parents, sir.
Okay.
I'm Sudha Patnaik, Captain Patnaik's daughter.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
I know you. Yeah, I know of your dad. Yeah.
You are way senior to me, so our interaction is very less, but I know Uncle and Auntie very well. Yes.
Yeah, my mom passed away a couple of years ago, but my dad has moved to Bangalore to a retirement home.
Yes. Yeah. You were mentioning that.
My father got his PhD from Andhra University at the age of 83.
So many of you still have hope, huh? And what was his PhD in, Krish?
He studied. He did the hermeneutics of human religion.
Okay.
So he subscribes to a different worldview, but you know, philosophically we have good discussions.
Good. Mine is a hermeneutics PhD also.
Okay. All right.
I think we'll need to mute all the mics, Ravi. There are lots of disturbance. Good to have you, Krish. We're expecting a couple of hundred, even more than that. So we'll wait a little while before I do a formal introduction of you.
Sure.
What time is it for you now?
It's 5:20 in the morning. I got here about 4:30.
Okay, good.
I just like using my studio in the office. Everything is set up, and then I don't have to worry about who's walking in the background.
Yes. Now, are you sharing our screen? Are you making are you putting anything on our?
No, I'm not.
No.
I didn't plan on.
No, some of us don't need to.
Yeah, so
Yes.
I've reached a point where I just make my point with power.
What do you work on, Mr. Krish? Or is it Dr. Krish?
No, Dr. Krish is my father. Mine are only honorary doctorates, so I don't use them. But yeah, I'm a corporate trainer and speaker, and I've written books on leadership. I've been in this human engineering realm now for about 30 years. And I split my time between the corporate world for about 6 months, and then I also have a small ministry which I affiliate with Ravi Zacharias. So I've trained in apologetics. So that's what I do in the academy the rest of the time. So.
Do you still come to Vizag?
Yeah, I come often, but I haven't been there, of course. I usually come to India about 5 times a year
Okay.
to see my dad, but haven't been there since about February this year, obviously. So as soon as this opens up, Vizag and Bangalore are the 2 first stops. I mean, we still have a home in Vizag that.
So when you come to Vizag, please contact us.
I will. So.
Well, let me officially start off our afternoon meeting today with Krish Dhanam. And I'm glad we have several of you logged in, joined in already. Others are on the way. And meanwhile, I'd like to just have an informal chat with you, Krish, and find out more about, your India connections and your present preoccupations. I know that you were connected with the Zig Ziglar Corporation.
Sure.
You had lots of, that's one of the legendary names that, we read so many quotes from Zig Ziglar. And how did you get connected with that corporation?
Mr. Ziegler was my mentor. He was my spiritual father. I went to work. I won a sales contest, to give the short version. I won a sales contest, and the prize was to attend a seminar of his. So on Republic Day 1990, January 26th, I walked into an auditorium with 1,800 other people and was mesmerized for about 3 hours by a man who spoke with great simplicity. He was not academically qualified. He never went to university. So by my Indian upbringing, he would not qualify to be a mentor or an advice giver. But every word was simple, it was direct, and it was uplifting. With 8 pages of notes, I left that evening with the decision that I would meet him and I would go to work for him. And in 1990, I went to work for him as a telemarketer. I took a $2,500 a month pay cut in 1991. And went to work for him as a telemarketer, eventually became his VP of global operations after 18 years and wrote a book with him and all that. So he launched my career, but I sought him out and I did what nobody would have done. You don't need an MBA to go and carry his bag, but.
Amazing. Some of your teachers, you're talking to an old companion who's reached the heights in the US. And then you connected afterwards with Ravi Zacharias. How did that happen?
Well, I was speaking in India at a youth event for Ashok Vednagam in outside of Chennai. And Arun heard me there, who was at that time working with Ravi, Arun Andrews. You know Arun Andrews.
Yeah.
So Ravi, at that time, they were looking for someone who could bring levity to the serious topic of logic. And I had earned the nickname by that time as being the laughing evangelist. People always tell me that, why do you, and that was something I had just learned. I've always used humor as a mechanism to connect.
Good.
And
Are we in for a laughing session this afternoon too?
Oh, hopefully a little bit. Let's,
Okay.
yeah, my friend Victor Abraham often said, laughter is the best medicine, but if you laugh for no reason, you probably need medicine.
Yes. And your time with Ravi, what was your highlight over there?
I still am a global adjunct with them. I'm on staff with them out of Atlanta.
Yeah.
So I represent them globally, and I work with their colleagues in Africa primarily,
Yeah.
and a lot through the US. But the highlight of that was in 2010, getting a chance to meet him. And then he inviting me to, for about 6 years, they invited me everywhere. And after 6 years, they asked if I would join. But I've had many very personal moments with him, and I know you did as well. I saw your tribute to him from the early days.
Yeah.
But the highlight for me was he was speaking in Hawaii at an event that I had spoken at the previous year, the Governor's Prayer Breakfast. And he called me from Hawaii saying, I'm coming into Dallas. Can I come in a little earlier? I would like to meet you because you're well loved here. And that defined for me his humility, that a man of his stature would want to change his flight to come in early to meet someone like me. And that's when I realized that, he actually.
That defines your stature, Krish. You're too humble. Defines your stature too.
Well, he walked his talk and he taught us that. And so my model of leadership has always been answer every call within reason. And Mr. Ziegler always told me one phrase, be it a job big or small, do it well or not at all. So that's, between these two mentors, I've been very, very fortunate.
Yeah. And today, what is the thing you do most?
Well, as I was sharing earlier, I have a company called SkyLife Success, which is a consulting company. This is where I spend about 6 months of the year in the corporate space. I write books on leadership. I co-authored a book with the former president of Microsoft called Hard-Headed, Soft-Hearted. So I have some skins on the wall in the leadership realm. For half the year, I travel as an apologist and evangelist globally. And I'm invited into arenas which the traditionalists cannot go into because of my corporate identity.
Yeah.
I jokingly tell people half the year I work for the yacht people, so the other half I can go serve the boat people.
You obviously have a strong Christian faith. Tell us about that.
Mr. Ziegler led me to Christ. I was raised in a Brahmin family. My father still subscribes to the Hindu worldview. So we went through some consternation there. But I married a girl who was of Christian heritage, 5th generation. Her parents were educated in the West, and then they raised her in India. So she was born in America and raised in India. So we came away here, but Mr. Ziegler was the one who completed that walk. My mother-in-law and father-in-law, you may know, his name is Raj Michael. He is the director of Ingraham Institute in Ghaziabad.
Yeah.
And I married his daughter, and his brother was Major J.K. Michael, who headed CASA. And my mother-in-law's brother headed YMCA, R.K. Seth. So they were a prominent North Indian Christian family.
Yeah.
All of them had been educated in the West, but all lived in India.
Okay.
So that my mother-in-law started the journey. Mr. Ziegler fulfilled the journey. So I wrote a book called From Abstracts to Absolute, Searching for the True Identity of God, dedicated to both of them. So
Wonderful. And your Christian faith, you divide your time speaking, in Christian platforms and in other platforms. Do you see yourself?
Yeah, there's no divided marker. Most people, if you go on my YouTube channel and all, will know that I have a decided, very vocal faith.
Yeah.
I just tell people that I straddle the line between secular and sacred without irritating either.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate because even in the corporate space, I teach ethics. So I always teach ethics from a tri-dimensional standpoint that man is mental, physical, and spiritual. And I don't have any flack because of the apologetics background. You bring research into the equation. So,
Yeah.
you know, there is a heart hurt in this world, but the head does allow us to reach the heart.
Okay. So basically, you would say ethics is the kind of platform that you use.
Yeah, because as Ravi himself used to point out, you know, there are traditional apologists, but very few deal with moral apologetics. So I talk about the downfall in culture as the reason for the lack of motivation, the mixed messages we get
Yeah.
on our way to work confuse us. And so I debate some of the issues which talk that, you know, and again, we bring history into the equation. Now, I've written curriculum on sales and marketing. My ministry is completely supported by companies whose bottom line I impact. I don't do a fundraiser.
And you worked with some of the large corporations. We know that. My question to you should have been, how much time do you give to the Ravi Zacharias, organization?
Yeah, to Ravi, I think I do probably about 25% of my time would go towards work that they are, but he's so well known in the US, even my corporate bio has my affiliation with him. When I do a lecture of 45 minutes, in the Q&A, the first question is always about him. When he speaks here, the line is out of the door. It circles the building and in the parking lot. I mean, when he was alive, he garnered attention in America like no other person I've ever seen.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. And it's my own background started with my interaction with Ravi Zacharias, my Christian faith. And there was a group of people at that time in Delhi, Ravi and his two sisters. There was a musician by the name Freddie David, and there was Sundar Krishnan, a Brahmin convert.
Right.
And all of them, they were attracted me so much that I haven't slipped out again since then. Amazing, Krish. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you.
I welcome you to the platform where we have teachers mainly from the Timpani School, from the ACT schools, and from other agencies that we know of. And we would like you to spend time, take your time, feel free, and you allow time for question and answers at the end, or you give them questions. We'll go into a little chat room in order to discuss them. We'll see. We'll just go with the flow. So
Sure.
Just take your time. Okay.
All
Over
right.
to you, Krish. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ken, for inviting me. I've heard of you quite a bit through different colleagues. You've mentored some of the people who are dear friends of mine in Bangalore, Robin and Linda. And so when I told them I was going to be on with you, they told me I would be blessed. And I already feel a good connection. So appreciate the opportunity to, I don't tell people I'm a product of the Indian education system. I tell people I'm a victim, because I graduated in that half of the class that made the top half possible. In fact, so I was not a very bright kid. But in my early days in Timpani were something very fascinating. And since some of you have that connection, I want to share with you. You know, we used to have these rickety intercom boxes in those days where the voice of the principal or authority would come over and we would freeze wherever we were. That was discipline. And but in those early morning assemblies was a world painted, a picture that for me was so far away, stories told of things that we could do with our life. Some of them were biblical, some of them had proverbs, but I was raised in a background that I didn't understand a lot of it. But growing up in Vizag, one of the things that we did, which is the only thing we could do at that time, we didn't have the computers and all of that. I've titled this small message called Compete and Complete. I was raised in a competitive environment. Not being a good student, it hurt me quite a bit. But later on in life, I learned the principle, don't just compete, complete. Don't compete at everything, complete something. And so one of the games we used to play as a kid was we used to go to the Ramakrishna beach and sit on the beach and watch the ships. And me and my friend would play a game. I wonder where that ship is going to. And the teacher in school would say, once you played that game and you identified a country where that ship went to, I want you to go back to the library or to your encyclopedia, which is what we had to go to in those days, and find out something about that country. And the next evening or the next time you go back to the beach, you talk to your friend about the geography there. So that was when my early desire to explore new frontiers was born. And I always had a confidence that necessarily did not come with competence. I was not very competent, but I was confident, which means confidence without competence can lead to arrogance, which means that's what I was. I was arrogant to a fault, but I knew that the world would be my oyster. And by God's grace now, I have been to 75 countries on 6 continents, following that early dream. So for those of you who are students on the call, dream of frontiers that are so vast, dream of possibilities that are so big, dream of opportunities that are so beyond. For the teachers, I would encourage you to do this. Put the possibility of hope in every child, regardless of their quantitative output. Give them a qualitative desire. I had a teacher in Vishaka Valley who marveled somehow at my ability to construe English language. Now, within the confines of the Indian subject matter content, I was not very good at a lot of subjects, but I was very good at English. As a result, when I did my MBA, I graduated near the top of my class because it dealt with my basics. But when I was growing up, my brother had become an engineer. The pressure was on me to go into the sciences. But I had one teacher who basically reminded me, she says, God has given you a gift like none other that I can see. I want you to pursue it. I want you to understand. So, I now look back and I realize that teachers are that last frontier of hope. For both of you, teachers and students, I'm going to give you a story and 3 short principles, and hopefully that will be impactful to you. The story is told of Jaime Escalante. Jaime Escalante was a Bolivian who came to live in Los Angeles, and he was a teacher of calculus with some very unorthodox methods. Jaime Escalante's life was chronicled in a movie called Stand and Deliver, which was portrayed by the Hispanic actor, Edward James Olmos. But Jaime Escalante had a very unique style of teaching mathematics. And one day, when all of his students in the barrio in Los Angeles, which means these are disenfranchised people, out of the 18 kids, 17 of them passed the advanced placement calculus test. But that was not the issue that the authorities took. All of them made the same mistakes in terms of computation, which means the teacher's method was so ingrained in them that all of them made the same mistake. So the authorities said, these are kids who probably cheated. And they made them take the test again, and all of them passed again, which means they understood the basics. So Jaime Escalante was one of those people who found the best in people by teaching the unorthodox. But why is his story important? There's a story of 2 kids who were in his class. Both of them had the last name of Johnny. One was a truant kid, which means he was not very good in his academic prowess. The other was a very good student, which means everybody was compared to him. And one day the mother of the kid who was not doing well came to a parent-teacher meeting. Escalante thought, why would the mother of a kid who is not doing well seek me out? It's probably the mother of the one who is doing well that is seeking me out. See, this is a very important thing. If you have the presupposition that there is always good in someone, you do not begin with any kind of prejudice in mind. So believing that the kid whose mother was coming to see him was his good kid, when the mother said, how's my son doing? He says, oh, Johnny's a delight to have in class. He's always participating in class. He's doing the better than anybody else. His attitude is a go-to attitude. He's one of the most willing kids I know. The mother was shocked because that was the exact opposite of the kid she had at home. So she went back to the house, and when the kid asked the mother, what did my teacher say? He says, oh, Mr. Escalante said, you're a good kid, you participate in everything, you're ahead of the curve. Now, most of you know that statistics have been done on this. You can write down to the basics of giving people in two focus groups. One is a placebo, one is a real, and we've known how those things work out. But in this one, it was fascinating. That kid immediately started showing progress. From a failing grade, he started at least getting C's and D's. By the end of that year, I think he was a good, solid average student, which means we're not saying that suddenly if you change the input, everything changes. Mr. Ziegler, my mentor, always said, criticize the performance if the performance deserves criticism, but praise the performer so they can fight another day. And I'm very grateful to some of the teachers in my journey, because even though I was not a good student, they saw in me something that allowed me to now write books and travel the world and be someone who is considered a teacher, which I consider one of my great humbling honors. I've spoken in many of the august institutions in India, including Timpani, and I attribute that. So for those of you who are educators, you are the last line of defense. For those of you who are kids, let me tell you this, you are not 100% of the problem like everybody is telling you, but you are 100% of the future. You are 100% of the future. Without this, there is no tomorrow. So here are 3 habits I want to give you. One is the habit of living your day by the clock, but your life with a vision. The habit of living your day by the clock, but your life with a vision. When Dr. Ken asked me to come on this program and be with you guys, and he told me the time, I set my opportunity clock. I know negative people call it an alarm clock. See, when you hear an alarm, it's a siren or an ambulance, and it usually scares you. So call it an opportunity clock, because when you hear it, it's an opportunity to get up and go. If you wake up scared to death, you can't perform. But I set my opportunity clock for 3 a.m. this morning. I took a shower, I got ready, I came and I wrote my notes. Practice. This character is the ability to have pride in the mundane. The mundane is what we do every day. If you live your day by the clock and your life with a vision, you will have great discipline. Sybil Stanton wrote a book called The 25-Hour Woman. In that she said, discipline is not on your back needling you with imperatives. It's at your side encouraging you with incentives. To which I'd like to add, the day you make yourself a slave to discipline, the world will become your oyster. So first, live your day by the clock and your life with a vision. Second habit of the heart is don't run if you don't know how to walk. We have such a desire to think of ourselves at the end of the process while we're still in the middle of the process. See, earthquakes and hurricanes get all the publicity, termites do more damage. You can make radical changes in minute steps. The food you eat at the mountaintop only grows in the valley. Nothing grows on the mountaintop. So start walking before you run. And here's the principle I've shared with my dad. Compete, don't complete, but more importantly, complete, don't compare. Success is personal. Comparison is not. When my father was 75 years old, he attended one of my seminars in Hyderabad. And my father was going through that stage where, like anybody else, he'd now retired, he'd done all the things he had done, and he was going through some of that bitterness that comes with, I've done everything for everybody, what about me? And my principle for him at 75 is the same principle to you, walk, then run. So I made a statement, I said, when your obligations to others finish, your obligations to your dreams remain. And my dad looked at me, he says, what do you mean? I said, you're running right now. You're running to your end zone bitter. You need to walk to the end zone accomplished. I said, you have a BSc from Andhra University, 1955. Why don't you take it and go to the university and ask them if those qualifications still work? So one day he was walking in the engineering college, he saw MA Philosophy Correspondence course, and he went and asked them. Finished his MA at 77, petitioned the Vice Chancellor of Andhra University, created a portfolio of his last 50 years as managing director of companies and all, and said, I need a seat on the PhD program. They said, we can't give you a seat. What are you not going to do anything with it? He said, if anybody in this town deserves a seat, I do. I've done everything here. And reluctantly, with special permission, they gave my father a seat for the PhD program. Now, here's the beauty of the principle. My father was an elderly statesman, very accomplished, very well known in that town. My mother is also very well known in that town. My mother took my father's advice, and my mother had her undergraduate. She'd finished her BA in history in Telugu. And so she enrolled in the MA history program, which no longer gives the thing in Telugu. So my father, while he was doing his PhD, was reading my mother's books in Telugu, in English, and giving it to her in Telugu because they told her, even though the course is in English, we can find someone who will examine your papers in Telugu. So you can give your program in Telugu, but you'll have to learn in English. And my father helped my mother get her master's at the age of 77. Now, the reason I share this story is never once during that time did my father ever cash in on his age. Never once in that time did he cash in on his experience. Never once in that time did he cash in on his prominence in society. My father had been the president of Walter Club and all of that. He had prominence. He would go to the philosophy department at 7:45 in the morning, driving his little Wagoneer with his little tiffin box and his little soup flask. Mom would make him a sandwich. And he would open the philosophy department because he says, I am a research fellow when I start. So technically I'm the junior most in the department. And my father would switch on the lights, clean the tables, and make the coffee. See, this is the illustration of humility. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking less often of yourself. Once you do that, some amazing things will happen. So the first principle was live your day by the clock and your life with a vision. The second is learn to walk before you can run. And third comes from Emerson. If you're going to pull me up, you better be on higher ground. If you're going to pull me up, you're going to be on higher ground. You know, the principle we now live in is we don't want to elevate other people. I have a young lady who works with me. Her name is Shelley. Shelley is part of what we would call the Gen X crowd. She's in her mid-30s. Smartest, brightest girl I've ever met in terms of accomplishment. 8 years ago, when I wanted to hire her, the amount of money she was making, there was no way I could do that for a small company that I was starting. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to pull her up, I better be on higher ground. So I went humbly to her and I didn't use again my credentials that I'm an author and I've done this and I'm going to interview you based on who I am. I'm going to interview you based on who you can be. And I looked at her and I said, how much will you charge to give me 1 hour a week just to do some of my letters and to approve some of my stuff? And then next week is how much will you charge for 2 weeks? Finally, using the resources of 4 different companies, we were able to hire her a year ago, but it took 7 years. Remember what I said. Don't expect the end of the process while still in the middle of the process, but if you're going to lift someone else, you must be on higher ground. So these are practical principles. Now, for those of you who are youth listening to this, the questions you need to ask yourself are, how can I develop these habits? Because for the students, I've always wondered, if I had gotten the advice I now have when I was in school, would I have been better off? Probably not, because it would not have taken. But I do remember Billy Graham's words. When Billy Graham was asked, what would you change? He says, I wouldn't change anything because I'm the sum total of my experiences and I like where I am. By the same token, there are certain things you can adjust to your input along the way. And these are what are called habits of the heart. So the first added habit of the heart that I would encourage you to have is pride in wherever you are. Don't look for something that doesn't exist. The only thing that exists right now is the reflection. See, most people will stand in front of the mirror and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, do I have a prayer at all? I'm asking you to stand in front of the mirror and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, here I am. What's my call? Second, don't be afraid to ask for help in the areas you're deficient. Because there's not one of us, I think I am looking at 273 participants on this call right now. There's not one of us here that is smarter than all of us put together. remember this, meekness is not weakness. You can be humble, but you can carry a strong stick. You can be simple, but you can be profound. So don't be afraid to ask for help. If I could change one thing, I would go back. I would ask for help earlier. Sometimes pride gets in the way. So those are the habits. Second is the hopes. Leadership expert John Maxwell once said that if there's hope in the future, there's power in the present. Alfred Adler, the great psychologist, said, hope is the foundational quality of all change. Eric Hoffer, a change agent, said, in times of change, it is the learners who will inherit the earth, while the learned will find themselves beautifully equipped for a world that no longer exists. So be a constant student. Don't be someone who thinks of yourself as a finished product, but have hope. Without hope, we start perishing. I just turned 58. During this pandemic, I wrote 2 books. I've recorded, I don't know, countless messages. Yesterday, someone asked me why. I said, why not? There's no big secret to it. The desire to do something is just that. 97% of the people in this world operate in the comfort zone. They are good, they are honest, they're tax-paying, they're law-abiding. But 3% operate in the effective zone. The difference between comfort and effectiveness is growth. Growth has always been uncomfortable. So one thing I decided was I normally wake up at 5 a.m. When this pandemic started, I decided I would start waking up at 4 a.m. Someone asked me why. I said, if everybody is at home, nobody has traffic issues, everybody is going to get to work at the same time, what is going to be my edge? My edge has to be, I need to be awake at least an hour before everybody else so I can lean on God, whatever it is. Here's the principle. Change that is not uncomfortable will not stick. Change that is not uncomfortable will not stick. Nobody likes change. The only person who likes change is a baby in wet diapers. Everybody else struggles with it. But once this thing changes, and scientists, I was on a program last week that I hosted with a doctor from India called Hope during the pandemic, and he talked about vaccines that are on the horizon, and we will find a solution to this. Humanity will return to normal. When humanity returns to normal, are you going to be the one who has now used this 6 months to accelerate? Because for the first time in your life, the playing field has been level. Your average billionaire, your Hollywood and Bollywood star, every academic, every industrialist is stuck at home. Nobody has had an edge during this time. Everybody is looking at a screen. So did you use this time to read? For youngsters, I'd encourage you to read. I somehow lost the desire to read because of the way I perceived it. But now for the last 27 years, I have read at least 1 book every week. And that is because of someone put the joy of learning in me. Here's the principle. When you internalize something that is profound and you personalize it because you want to make it specific, it's very easy to synthesize and vocalize it. You have what is called instant recall. The 3%, in America, I teach communication classes, which is fascinating because 100% of my audience is white. Americans come here to sit in my class, and I'm not kidding you, they pay me north of $1,000 a day. That's why I can do what I do. I work for 6 months of the year, and I go serve for 6 months of the year because I've earned the ability to do it. But it comes with the desire to be disciplined, to do something. Now, none of this is, remember what I said, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but it takes effort. Nothing in this world is easy. You can change if you want to. You can change if you have to. You can change if you should. You can change if you would. But the most profound change will happen because you decided one day that you really don't care what other people think. See, life is not a popularity contest. It never has been. It never will be. That's one of the things that you'll realize in life. And For all of us, I love my early lessons from Timpani for this. They never trained me to be a citizen. They trained me to be a global denizen. Timpani gave me the courage to see a world that I could not imagine and integrate, not irritate, participate, and perform. I have met Timpani people all over the world. In fact, I'm pretty sure that if you look at a school in India that would boast an alma mater or an alumni that is in the most countries around, Timpani and IIT would probably run neck and neck, is just my guess. Even in the US, we have a huge following. The reason I share that is, even though I only spent 5 years of my life, my formidable education, and some of the teachers from Timpani did go to Vishaka Valley. Mrs. Dattam was my teacher in Vishaka Valley. I mean, I knew a lot of them very well because my dad worked with their husbands. But I'm telling you this, from that little sleepy town in Vizag, I have never lost the gratitude. And I'll close with this. Have pride in your origin and never lose sight of it. I have never tried to be an American. I have a passport. My bio says born in South India in the sleepy town of Vizag. That's how I'm introduced with IBM and Marriott and American Airlines. And if you go on my website, you'll see who I've spoken to. Don't have pride in where you began. And if you perfect the ripples where you are, the tsunamis will take care of themselves. So these are some of the simple lessons I thought I would share with you, just like came to me over that intercom. And so back
Good.
to you, Dr. Ken.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Krish. I don't, we won't waste time going into any discussion, chat rooms and all that. We'll continue our interaction with you because
Perfect.
I think you have so much to give to us. One of the things you talked about, complete and not compete and completion.
Right.
Where do you see the balance between these two? We need to complete tasks that we've taken. We need to compete. There is always a competition wherever you are. So how do you see the balance between the two?
That's a great observation. I think that you will only be able to complete effectively if you compete with yourself. If you compete with others, everything will be a half-hearted attempt. You'll be on hesitation hill. If only I had their background, if only I had that money, if only I lived in that neighborhood, if only I had that subject. So if you compete with yourself, the principle here is yesterday always ends with last night. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. So if you're in competition, make sure you're competing with yourself every day so you complete every day. So Jim Rohn, that great business philosopher, once said, since the beginning of time, there have never been 2 consecutive days without a night.
So your suggestion is that we keep a kind of a marker of our own performances and see how we can be, growing, increasing,
Right.
and whatever.
Yes, a thought that just came to me is a guy by the name of Bob Townsend who wrote a book called Up the Down Organization. He revolutionized and turned around the rental car company Avis. So later on in retirement on a boat in the Caribbean, he wrote this book, which became an international bestseller. But Bob Townsend said every group of people he ever mentored, whether it was a small department or a large organization, he just gave them 3 basic questions. And these are the questions I ask myself every day, and I ask you to ask yourself every day. What do I do? This is role identity. You should be able to describe in less than 2 sentences what you do. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're confusing activity with accomplishment. We're all busy. What do you do? Second, what would you like to do? This is role vision. What do you do? Role identity. What would you like to do? Role vision. But the beauty of it was the third one, which Dr. Ken alluded to, is the benchmark, the performance criteria every day. How will you know when you get there? How will you know when you get there is your daily analysis. Have I invested every day something into my goal? So if I want to write a book, am I writing at least a paragraph a day so at the end of the year I can have 300 pages? If I'm going to read a book, am I reading at least 20 minutes a day. So at the end of the year, I can complete 20 books that are 200 pages in length. That's the quantitative breakdown of the qualitative desire.
Good, good, good. Teachers, I'll encourage you to put your questions into the chat box. And Annie, you're the only one with your mic, unmuted, so you can take them and give any, important questions. There may be so many, but take whatever you want to give to us. Now, the other question I want to ask you, Krish, is you mentioned the joy of learning. I know exactly what you mean, because that to me, as I'm approaching 80 even, that is the greatest thing that motivates me to keep going. Now, how do you think we can develop that in our lives? You're talking to teachers, they think they've given, they go to a classroom, they give, and they think they've given enough, but how can you help them?
It's interesting, and I think Ravi had shared this with me one time when I asked him, how do you stay up in your learning? You're doing 200 days a year on the road. I spent 100, and before the pandemic, I was spending about 120 nights a year on average in a hotel room. So there is a joy, there's a discipline that has to go into having that joy. But the way I look at it is happiness depends on happenings, but joy is undiluted. So the things we do are events based. So the way Ravi put it was, if you're teaching, make sure you're not just preaching, you're also reaching. And that was foundational, because we're not talking theology here, we're talking sociology. But if you're teaching and your only desire is to give that which you know so that they will now get what you know, so they will get to know it, that's teaching. But it's what they will do with it that liberates them. So not everybody is going to take the same mathematical formula and arrive at the same decision. I can learn the mathematics and see life is formulaic. So when you teach mathematics, if they had taught me this by simply saying, hey, listen, when you know why, anyhow is possible. And all we teach in mathematics is why.
Yeah.
Why? Because mathematics is formula. Goal setting is formulaic. So when people know why, anyhow is possible.
Yeah.
You don't need just one way, there are many ways. What that means is you're telling the person, don't change your destination, but I'm going to give you permission to change direction.
Good. One of the things you started off by talking about is humility. And Anupa, my daughter, has a question here. As you walk and as you run your race, how do you keep humility in check? Are there any markers you have there?
I was speaking to a gathering in Bangalore. I think it was the St. Mark's group on Saturday, and someone had quoted something I had said. This comes more from a theological perspective, but I discovered this humility when I was in Kenya doing a foot washing ceremony with the Maasai tribe. They would not want to take their shoes off because those feet had not seen a bar of soap in God knows how long. But their worship was holy and pious. If you ever want to understand worship, on YouTube, go in and see, just type in Maasai worship and you will be elevated, as they do. They jump pretty high. But when I took this woman's shoes off, I felt an overwhelming burden. And the burden was not that I was doing something great. I just saw that suddenly the words of our Lord came to me. It simply said, I love these feet. And I started crying as she was crying. That's when I came up with this definition. Servant leadership, which is the precursor to having that humility, is bending so low that you can never see the face of those you're trying to impact, only their feet. But they look over you at the Christ who sent you.
Yeah. Amazing. You've obviously, learned these things through your experiences. I go back to a question on education, because once again, we're talking to teachers here. I was a dropout in my primary school, a dropout in university. My real learning started in my early 30s.
Oh, wow.
And that is why I think, I learned what I needed to learn. what I needed to learn. You're dealing with the teachers, as I said, you're talking to teachers. During this pandemic time, is there something you want them to learn? Is there something they're forced to learn?
I love the fact that you brought up 30, so we have something else in common. My learning began at 31 as well. But the principle I learned in training when I became a trainer was, how do you impact adults? That's what we're talking about here. So if you're already in the process of teaching and all that, we can raise children, we can't raise adults. So that, Dr. Ramesh Richard, right? That's his statement. You can raise children, you can't raise adults.
Yeah.
But so one of the principles that we put into place here as far as that adult learning is simply this. Adult learning always takes existing knowledge and grows it from there, which means it never begins with regret. You do not regret anything. We were dropouts and I was outstanding. I was always standing outside the class. So, I used to tell people that, in America, corporal punishment is not allowed anymore. But people would ask me, what was education like in India? I said the teachers had the authority for their board of education to meet my seat of learning. So my mom would, if the teacher punished me in school and I went home and my father found out I'd been punished in school, I got punished again. I remember once in Vishaka Valley School, they made me walk home because I had made some mischief. And Vishaka Valley School is quite far away from Andhra University area where we were living. It's like 11 kilometers. And I had to walk home. And I came and complained to my dad about how they were misusing the fees he was working so hard to pay. He made me walk back the next day. So it's not, so adult learning does not deal with regret. If I had looked at everything that I had gone through, learning would have been a chore. But when it was presented as not something that was desiring to change me, but to instill in me a hope, here's the principle. 7.85 billion people on planet Earth, and God in his infinite wisdom made only one you. So we already win. He has not made us to compare with others who had unfair advantages or fair advantages.
Yeah.
Once you understand that you are unique, then the power of the mind, Stephen Hawking, the most brilliant man in the world who passed away recently at, had an IQ of 176. And I had the privilege of having some classes with John Lennox at a summer program in Oxford. And John Lennox put it this way. He says, even with the most advanced algorithms, we know that Stephen Hawking, the smartest man in the world, only had 2% of the world's available knowledge. If that's the case, what about you?
Yeah. Now, Krish, although you're saying, you're unique, each one of you is unique, and but still we're dealing with other unique individuals, all of them thinking. And now you and I perceive are the positive thinkers. So how is it that you deal with the average person and allow their uniqueness to become something where they are going to be performers, they're going to be influencers and changers? We're
not, because, you can't, I use a 60-20-20 rule in everything I do. 20% of the people in any class I've ever teach are smarter than me. They're just there because they have to be. Life has brought them there, their parents have put them there, whatever it is. 20% in any group I've ever been are probably intellectually brighter than me. 20% of the people are not going to get it. They would brighten up the whole room by leaving. You know what I'm talking about. These are so narrow-minded, they look through a keyhole with both eyes. So I'm talking about the 60 in between. What we as educators, and I consider myself one because I teach all day long, we as educators make one fundamental mistake that is more ego-driven. We slow down the top 20 because we want them to buy into our style. We try to accelerate the bottom 20 because our ego won't let us believe we have failed. And we ignore the middle 60, which is who's on their shoulders, you're going to go to the heights of greatness.
Yeah. Krish, the one reason I got into education myself is because of the faulty education systems that I saw in my younger days. And I begin to see the need for change. And during this pandemic time, I am in a way rejoicing because there are things I can pass on to these younger teachers. And are you looking at the pandemic time as well as something where you have a message for the world?
Yeah, because again, the playing field is level. Our excuses are gone out of the window. Nobody has an unfair start. We're all at ground zero. We're all in our respective aboards. There is, the IIT, the MIT, and I went to IMT. So, whichever alphabet you construe together, we all have the same background. And I was talking to Tom Ziegler, Mr. Ziegler's son, yesterday. And he says, yeah, my commute is now down to 7 seconds, and that includes stopping for coffee because the boardroom, the break room, and the bedroom are the same room. So, we're all in the same place. So one bit of advice I would give you for those of you that are doing virtual, be alive versus going live.
Wonderful.
Going
Terrific.
alive is a job. Job is a chore. Be alive. Let people. Yeah, my colleague Victor, who is one of my business partner, who's in Thane right now, in outside of near Bombay. He was on one of the programs I was on and he says, "Bro, I love your smile." And I'm thinking to myself, I'm on camera. People are watching all over the world. Why would you not smile when you're talking to people? Come alive before just going live.
Yeah. Krish,
I mean, can I watch your videos on Facebook, your music videos and all? You always have this expression of joy. Because people are, there may be 10 people in the living room, but we understand it's your reputation that people are coming for.
Very much.
Identity, so.
And Krish, last week I was delivering a lecture in the university college where I dropped out from, the chemical technology department in the Osmania University. And the professors were, flabbergasted that I was able to address them on sustainability. And they didn't have very much of, knowledge, although they're studying these things in their university, in their subjects. Now, as you look at the pandemic time, do you also see lessons on sustainability and what we can do individually?
Yeah, because as humanity, we were always designed for community, never for isolation. So hope is eroding at a rapid rate. People who are stuck with their parents 24/7, even though they were okay with their parents' discipline or disagreed with it, they had the out of being with their friends. So wherever we were, even in our relationships, if we disagreed with our relationship, we had an excuse when we went away somewhere. The principle was if two people agree on everything, one of them is unnecessary. But because we were moving along, we did not have to deal with that. Yeah. But now suddenly for 5-6 months, I've been home now. I've made a couple of trips in between when we went to Atlanta for Ravi's funeral. I'm leaving tomorrow. But for the majority of it, for someone who's gone 3 days a week to have been home for 4 straight months, I was asking my wife, I said, how do you think we have made it during this time? She says, because we have never stopped being who we were called to be. Mm. You're still an educator. Yeah. You're still an educator. The medium has changed. The message has not changed. Yeah. The agency of who you are has never changed. Your desire to do what you do should never be the medium. It's always the message. And to some degree, because you're an authority. Yeah.
What a timely message to our teachers that, the times have changed, the whole environment has changed, but we continue to be who we are. We are educators. And I still don't see any questions over there. That's why I'm enjoying myself talking away. I think you're one like me too, Krish, enjoy talking. So
I approach every subject with an open mouth.
So why don't you give us some closing words of advice now?
I want to share a story that I heard many years ago that actually encompasses all of this. And this story was told by Shashi Tharoor. Obviously, my vocabulary will come up far short of what his vocabulary is. But in fact, that was my joke one time when someone asked me in a public forum, says, when did you start reading Ravi Zacharias? I said, well, it took a while because the first book I bought of his got $400. And someone said, $400 for a book? I said, yeah, the book was only $9.95. I had to invest $385 in dictionaries and thesaurus to understand what he was saying. Ravi found out about that later on, and one day I said, in all humility, Krish, I still want you on my team. But Shashi Tharoor had this brilliant story which captivated my attention. It was done in Colorado to a bunch of American people and a global audience. At that time, I think he was an undersecretary for communication for the UN.
Yeah.
So someone asked him the question, and he gave this story, which is beautiful for India. And if your educators, pull the story up and tell it. The question was, when does darkness end and light begin? We're in darkness right now. At least that's our perceived perception. When does darkness end and light begin? He says a mystic was asked this question in the foothills of the Himalayas. And the mystic said, oh, either one of my two students can answer this question. It's very rudimentary. It's very basic. So he says, my pupil from the North Indian will go first. So the pupil from the North India said, oh, when the first rays of the morning sun come cascading down the Himalayan plain and the villagers awaken in God's awesome wonder, that's when darkness ends and light begins. Not impressed, the pupil from Southern India said, no, it's when the green of the Indian Ocean, the blue of the Bay of Bengal, and the red of the Arabian Sea come together at the southernmost tip of the Indian subcontinent, and you can see the dewdrops bounce on the Palmyra fronds. That's when darkness ends and light begins.
Yeah.
The mystic said, not impressed by two of his pupils, he says, no, it's when two people who are born 12,000 miles apart come together in a common embrace and say, we slept under the same stars. We dreamt under the same moon. We toiled under the same sun. That's when darkness ends and light begins. We're all unified. My mentor, Zig Ziglar, gave these 8 words in his book, See You at the Top. We all want to be happy, healthy, reasonably prosperous, have friends, family, security, peace of mind.
Yeah, Chris, last year, just a couple of days ago, I was watching a lovely old English movie produced by an Indian, Remains of the Day. And somewhere in the end was Emma Thompson saying, somehow we always love the evening. People applaud when the evening comes. And a question I can see here, childhood dreams are sometimes shattered. Yeah, and when the evening comes, that's not the question, but when the evening comes, these dreams are revived and we have regrets, we have kinds of maybe joy that we fulfill them. Childhood dreams are sometimes shattered. What is your advice to Tiffany? How do they?
Failure throughout the history of humanity has been an event. It has never been a person. You can fail at something. You cannot fail as someone. God loves you too much. When I heard those statements, all my past went away. And I heard that in a corporate setting. Because I always thought of myself, when you live with shame and you think failure is final, it's fatal, and it's futile, you'll never pick yourself up. But John Maxwell said, failure is not falling down. It's learning something when you were down there. You can let your past beat you, or you can let it teach you. And if you let it teach you, you'll rise. I mean, that's how Disney was born. That's how Hershey was born. And every successful person failed more than they succeeded.
Yeah. Amen. Beautiful note to conclude on. I don't want to prolong your time, Krish. You've been such an inspiration to us. Failure is not final. Failure is not fatal. Failure is the stepping stone for many of us. I can look back and see all the times I failed, and never once did I regret. I picked myself up, went on.
In fact, as teachers, let me give you this question you can ask, and students, you can also look at this question. I've asked this question in corporations all over the world. I said, how many of you have received a certificate of merit, a badge of honor, or a commendation since kindergarten? And every hand goes up. I said, how many people went by your office desk last week saying, way to go, 1973? Nobody cares. We all succeed and fail. It's called life.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
when you arrive at the end, someone asked me this. He says, Mr. Dhanam, you good game. When you are on your what do you want said at your funeral? I said, I want the preacher to say, I think he's still moving. 'Cause I'm not ready to go. And I want, if I'm still there at my funeral, I want to say, what a ride.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, Krish. It's been a joyful experience talking with you, chatting with you. It's been a beautiful experience. And most of us being old timpanions over here, we're happy that an old timpanion, has addressed us and challenged us so much. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too, sir. Thank you for having me. God bless you all.
Okay. Bye-bye. Good night. So teachers, thank you very much, all of you,
Thank
for
you, sir.
attending.
That was a beautiful one.
Thanks for Bangalore and Vizag, Calcutta. You've come from all over. Unmute and just say what you want to say in closing.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Thank you, sir.
So it was a fantastic one. In fact, the last question was mine only about the dreams of childhood shattered. And I think it touched me when he answered that question. Especially you, sir, you said failures are not final and they are only a stepping stone. So we should not look back to the past, but to the present. Thank you so much, sir. And of course, it was really a very good session, sir. You all
We
enjoyed
would
it.
love to have more of it, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, a big thanks to Krish, because a lot of eye openers into one's personal life. Really appreciate you bringing him, Dr. Ken.